I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Later That Same Life is my weekly podcast. New episodes pop every Thursday. Each week, thoughts, opinions, stories from our lives.
Season 5, Chapter 11.
The
Exhausted majority.
The exhausted majority. I want to talk more about the exhausted majority.
Exhausted majority.
Exhausted majority.
How incredibly descriptive is that term? The exhausted majority. It's not my term. It comes from a recent report called Hidden Tribes, a story of America's polarized landscape. So wow, we're a minute into this podcast and already a lot to wrap one's head around. This report, Hidden Tribes, a story of America's polarized landscape, is from a group called More in Common. Google them. More in Common has teams across the US, the UK, France, and Germany. Each team is made up of researchers, writers, educators, advocates, etc., who work to strengthen our resilience against the forces of division in our societies. More in common. I don't know about you, but I need that right now. I need to believe in a commonality within the human race and that others believe in it too. I have thought for a while that we spend way too much time concentrating on our differences, the uniqueness of our cultures and religions. And that's fine, celebrate those. But how about just a little more acknowledgement on how much we all have in common? We have more in common than that which divides us. Is that true? I'd like to think so. I need to believe so. Let's get back to the report, Hidden Tribes. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. You can read it for yourself. Again, the report is about the United States, and they categorized 7 tribes. But as I go through them, I think you'll easily see, and one could easily argue, that these exact divisions exist in many developed democratic nations, including Canada. 7 tribes. Here they are, left to right. Progressive activists, traditional liberals, passive liberals, the politically disengaged, moderates, traditional conservatives, and finally,
blazing up the charts at number 7,
devoted conservatives. Let's look at the 2 extremes first. On the left, progressive activists, and on the right, devoted conservatives. Just an observation. Isn't it interesting that the terms progressive and devoted have become negative criticisms, signs of polarization? I remember when being progressive or devoted was a good thing. Not anymore, you wacko. You know, in Canada, federally, we used to have a progressive conservative party. Well, progressive conservative, that's an oxymoron. Progressive conservative? What were they thinking calling themselves that? Perhaps they were just trying to fool some of the people some of the time. It seems today that if you're progressive or devoted, you're a wingnut. Incidentally, according to this report, the amount of people who identify as progressive activists or devoted conservatives, it's about the same percentage in each group, between 6 and 8%. This is important to note and remember. The number of people on the 2 extremes, the total, around 14% of the entire population. That's it. Over 85% of the population is not extreme. The problem is that 86% of the people are watching TV and on social, and most of what they see all the time is the 14%, because they are the loudest, the most obnoxious. Man, oh man, you know, even if I happen to agree with an activist or a devotee point of view, why are you so obnoxious? The 86%, a clear majority. They exchange texts and emails. They talk over coffee. It's the incendiary 14%, 7% here, 7% over there, that make all the noise and bring attention to themselves through media. Here's the question. how is our entire world polarized if only 14% of us live on the two opposite poles? The answer is we are not. Polarization is just a good buzzword. We are fed this steady diet of polarizing divisive minorities trying to draw us to one side or the other. Pick a side. Really? This leads me to this huge difficulty, especially in America. We're starting to see it in Canada. America is based mostly on dualities. Nuance is not their strength. In America, you are either left or right, black or white, red or blue, man or woman, straight or gay, young or old, urban, rural, rich, poor, so forth. At least in politics. You hear it all the time. They talk about the black vote, the female vote, the Latino vote. Well, guess what? All black people do not vote the same. All women are not pro-choice. And the Latinos, well, which ones are you talking about? The Mexicans in California, the Cubans in Florida, the Puerto Ricans in New York? Politics is supposed to be the interaction of people. It's the political system that has become polarized. The people, at least 86% of them, have not. Each of us are a complicated combination of many categories. And it seems we are tired, exhausted of being broken up into a single category, because it seems that that is the only way we can be represented in a democracy. How sad and horribly dangerous. Let me repeat, polarization, 14%, if we believe the data, and I do. 14% is the total amount of those who went off the deep end. So where is everyone else? In the middle? Well, kind of. Traditional liberals and traditional conservatives total 30%. The conservative percentage is slightly higher, at least in America. But if you add the passive liberals to that equation, the split is dead even. Liberals, conservatives, tied. The moderates number around 15%, and those who identify as politically disengaged, just over a quarter of the population, 25%. I'm sure the numbers and percentages may vary state to state, region to region, city to village, and so forth. But there you have it. And by the way, the politically disengaged 1/4 of the people, they are easy to spot. They are the ones who are usually saying things like, they're all alike, they're all crooked, they're all out for themselves, and other general statements of mistrust. So how exactly did this Hidden Tribes report identify the exhausted majority? Well, it's a subgroup, a sub-tribe, if you will. When you take out the two extreme wings and talk to the rest of the people in the middle, the majority, we are exhausted. It is tiring, isn't it? It's like living next door to the Bickersons. They're always arguing. The exhausted majority is fed up with all the arguing. And again, it's mostly all they ever see on TV and social. They feel they are more moderate and flexible, yet their views and voices go unheard. And they feel that no one seems to be seeking common ground on anything. I'm exhausted just saying all that. The term that some have used is that the majority of voices right now suffer from political homelessness. Here's another big issue if you are a moderate or flexible. You are not lauded or applauded for your common sense. You're accused of sitting on the fence. And in America, it's rarely even a fence anymore. It's usually a concrete barricade, or worse, police tape. Hey, what side of the police tape are you on anyway? The extremists don't like the moderates. Too shifty. Not sure where you stand. How you going to vote? Like I said, they need to put you in a category so that you become part of a voting bloc. And then strategists can begin to target you. And they'll say just about anything to pull you to their side. They're talking at you and definitely not listening to you. And after a while, no surprise, you feel fatigued. You want to give up. Remember, the largest percentage in the 7 tribes report, the biggest group, are the politically disengaged. The exhausted majority does not feel represented in government. They don't see themselves in politics and in the media. All they see is people yelling. When you hear that democracy is being threatened, well, that's why. But we should not be questioning democracy. We should be questioning the manipulation of it. Most every time, the problem is not the institution, but the people we install to run it. There are a lot of old axioms that cover this, by the way. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The lunatics are running the asylum. Don't put the cart before the horse. And sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Well, maybe not so much that last one, but I always liked it. I also don't quite understand why American-style politics is seeping its way into Canada. I mean, I get how, because we've always been influenced by our large, loud neighbor. But in Canada, at least politically, we have multiple choices. We have 4 national parties, and even a 5th crazy one trying to work its way into the far right. I'm not saying it's better than a 2-party system, because often in Canada, the extreme votes virtually cancel each other out, and we end up with a 2-party system. We also have a prime minister and a parliament. We're not a republic. Yet, for some bizarre reason, we have people wrapping themselves in the flag, crying freedom. That is so American. Do any stupid, threatening thing you want. Say any ridiculous thing you want. And it's okay, because you wrapped yourself in the flag. Now we're doing that in Canada, taking our beautiful, beloved flag and hanging it upside down from hockey sticks. It's time to take our flag back. Remember the hippies? They used to burn the flags? See, that's a protest. I mean, I would sooner see a flag burned in protest than waved to represent a hateful purpose. You know, when protesters lead their demonstration with a big banner that says F. Trudeau, you've lost me immediately. F. Trudeau is not the beginning of political dissertation. It's extremism. And I'm here to say once again that I believe this report. I believe in the data. The extremists are a loud, tiny minority. Their biggest victory is that they're exhausting the rest of us. And let's be clear, the non-extremists, you know, the traditional liberals and conservatives, the passives, the moderates, the flexible, we can and do have definitive views. We can fall on one side or the other of an issue. We just don't choose a hill to die on as readily as the crazies. Moderates have common sense, understand compromise and tolerance, and appreciate the value of occasionally just minding your own business. We have more in common than that which divides us. This advocacy group, More in Common, works to strengthen our resilience against the forces of division in our societies. Resilience. It's hard to be resilient when you're exhausted. We need some mass emotional nap, 40 winks, psychological refresh. Hey, nut jobs, can you keep it down for a few minutes? I'm trying to rest. There are forces of division in our society. Why are they there? I'm not sure. Perhaps it's as old as divide and conquer. That goes back millennia. When you lack the strength, intelligence, and leadership to create a popular following, you instead divide the people amongst themselves, weakening their will. That's not real leadership. That's divide and conquer. Extremists, the forces of division, must not be allowed to win. Divide and conquer goes back to the days of Julius Caesar. In other words, we've been through this before. We've even managed in the past to divide and conquer the dividers. But there's a big difference today. I've mentioned this before. The big difference today is the connectivity. Smartphones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and more. It has never been easier to quickly and conveniently find like-minded people, regardless of the extremism, and subsequently create a following. And a following further bolsters one's extreme beliefs. So, we've been under attack before by the forces of division, but now connectivity is the big game changer. There's an old quote attributed to Mark Twain, although there actually is no real credible evidence he ever said it. But it's still very good, and it goes, "History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes." So it seems like we've been here before, but we really haven't. Hidden Tribes, a story of America's polarized landscape. I recommend you check it out. I'm not a fan of the title, honestly. I think they dropped the ball there. I mean, I get it. Today, we tend to create tribes instead of communities. You know, it seems the only time I hear the word community is in another story about a mass shooting in America. It's devastated our community. Really? Because just before this, you were acting more like a tribe. Plus, these tribes were not really hidden, are we? We are out there every day. And to further pick it apart, I said progressive conservative is an oxymoron. Well, so is polarized landscape. You know, a landscape is a wide view of an expanse. Polarization is the opposite of that. Well, despite a bad title, it's still a good report. Let's understand and take away at least this one thing, that a minority of people can't polarize an entire society. No matter how much media coverage they get, media will always show you the 1,000 people marching down the street with placards, and not the other 2 million people quietly going about their lives in their neighborhoods. Granted, we have all lost friends and relationships based on political or sometimes even religious divides. But the left and the right, 14% on the extremes. The rest of us, the majority, the exhausted majority. And tired or not, we need to stop waiting for someone to speak for us and start speaking for ourselves. We need to engage the disengaged, activate the passive. And as far as the moderates, and yes, I believe everything in moderation, which of course includes moderation.
Later That Same Life is written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.